Hi and welcome to Random Knowledge. I'm going to be talking about the sinking of the HMS Prince of Wales and the HMS Repulse in World War II. So I'll just go into a little bit of background about the situation leading up to these events. Before World War II officially started, Japan had been attacking its neighbors to gain territory, power, and resources. The US put an embargo on Japan in order to try to stop its expansion in the region. This led to political tensions between the US and Japan. Great Britain, who was an ally of the United States, had territories in the region near Japan. Japan was in talks with the US to try to resolve their political issues. Before these talks came to a conclusion, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, on December 7, 1941. At the same time as attacking Pearl Harbor, Japan also launched attacks at Malaya, Singapore, and Hong Kong, which were all British-held territories in the region. They attempted to make a landing on the coast of Malaya, and they bombed both Singapore and Hong Kong. In solidarity with the United States, and because of the attacks on their territories in the region, Great Britain declared war on Japan. About a week before the declaration of war, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill had ordered a naval task force to the Pacific near Singapore in order to deter Japanese aggression. This task force was called Force Z. It consisted of several ships but was built around two main ships, the HMS Prince of Wales, which was a battleship, and the HMS Repulse, which was a battle cruiser. A battleship is just a heavily armed and armored ship whose main goal at that time was to attack and destroy other ships. A battle cruiser was meant to fulfill a similar role to a battleship. They were heavily armed but lacked the strong armor of a battleship. This allowed them to be faster and more maneuverable, but it came at the expense of armor. Now I'll get into the Japanese attack and the sinking of the HMS Prince of Wales and the HMS Repulse. The reason that Force Z had been sent to Singapore was to deter Japanese attacks in the area. On December 8th, Force Z was sent out to find and attack a Japanese invasion force that was spotted in the area. Great Britain had no aircraft carriers nearby to accompany Force Z. Force Z therefore had no air cover, which was somewhat of a concern at the time, but most naval thinkers believed at the time that a force like this would be able to handle itself in the face of an attack. These ships were equipped with anti-aircraft guns, and it was unknown how powerful an attack from the air would be. Many of the sailors on the British ships were very confident in their ability to defeat Japanese warships in the area. After sailing for 2 days without finding the invasion force they had been sent out to attack, on the morning of December 10th, Japanese aircraft located Force Z. These were land-based aircraft that were based near Saigon. The Japanese air attack came in a few waves. The first wave was made up of G3M bombers. These bombers were equipped with 250 kilogram bombs. Their goal was to attack from high altitude and drop bombs on the ships below. The British tried their best to fight them off with anti-aircraft fire as they came within range. As the bombs dropped from high altitude, the ships below maneuvered left and right to try to avoid them. This tactic worked fairly well with high-altitude bombing in World War II. The ships were able to see the bombs coming and could maneuver left or right to avoid them. However, the Japanese were able to score one direct hit on the Repulse. This bomb destroyed her seaplane deck. However, it didn't cause any major damage to the ship that would cause a loss of speed or maneuverability. In these sorts of engagements, the ship's ability to maneuver and the ship's speed are key factors in their ability to avoid bombs. The second wave of Japanese aircraft consisted of 9 G3M bombers. These bombers were equipped with torpedoes. Torpedo bombing was very dangerous in World War II. The aircraft had to come in from a very low altitude and quite slowly. However, torpedoes could be very effective against enemy ships. Japanese pilots in this stage of World War II were very skilled. They had years of training, and the selection process for pilot recruits was very selective at this time. These torpedo bombers split up into groups of 2 or 3 and attacked the Prince of Wales from either bow. This sort of attack makes it extremely difficult for the ship to maneuver to avoid these torpedoes. Many sailors on the Prince of Wales were caught below deck. The ship rolled over and started sinking. The destroyers of the task force continued to circle and pick up survivors from both ships. As the Japanese aircraft above circled to inspect the damage, one flashed an English message to the sailors below. "We have finished our task now. You may carry on." Author Ian W. Toll has a great book series on the Pacific War. I'll include a quote from his first book, Pacific Crucible, here. Pacific Crucible, War at Sea in the Pacific, 1941 to 1942. A handful of RAF fighter planes arrived just as the Prince of Wales was going down, but they could do nothing but circle and watch. One of the pilots recalled the sight of the men in the water. "After an hour, lack of petrol forced me to leave, but during that hour I had seen many men in dire danger, waving, cheering, and joking, as if they were holidaymakers at Brighton, waving at a low-flying aircraft. It shook me, for here was something above human nature." Due to this attack, 47 British officers and 793 men died. The Japanese lost 3 aircraft. The sinking of these 2 ships did a lot to change naval thinking of the time. Most naval thinkers prior to World War II felt that the naval situation in an upcoming war would be resolved through one huge battle, where huge groups of battleships and other warships fought themselves to a decisive conclusion. Because of this thinking, countries before the war focused on building large, expensive battleships and battle cruisers. This battle, along with Pearl Harbor, and the Battle of Midway that would follow it, showed that aircraft and aircraft carriers were now the queens of the chessboard when it came to naval battles. Aircraft were considerably cheaper in both cost and lives than a battleship or a battle cruiser. A small group of a few relatively inexpensive aircraft could bring down an expensive and huge battleship. These events shifted naval thinking. Now naval task forces would be built around aircraft carriers. Battleships would still take part in these task forces, but they wouldn't be the focus of them. Now these task forces would be built around aircraft carriers, where the focus of the other ships would be to defend and supply these aircraft carriers. It was also found that anti-aircraft guns were only so effective against attacking aircraft. It was found that in order to increase protection, a huge number of anti-aircraft guns would have to be placed on ships. Thanks for watching my first video. If you liked what you saw, please like and subscribe.